if you think about it like that. But again, most agents, they don't really like math very well, but I think that's what's so great about us
That's
translating for them is that we're going to do the math for you and then make it make sense.
That's 100% right. So,
welcome to the Crazy Agent Dinner Party. Part group therapy, part inspiration, entirely for real estate agents to dish on this crazy business we're in.
Yeah, actually.
Come on in, have a seat at our table. And remember, real estate is crazy, and you don't have to be.
Here is your hostess with the mostest, with 20 plus years in real estate, the real estate mom you never knew you needed, Amanda, the marketing mama. Our special guest today is John Chin, co-founder of the Investor Agent Community. John has always taken a contrarian's approach to real estate, which means he refuses to compete. Rather, he monopolizes niches in the residential, investment, and distressed property space that other agents haven't discovered. On today's menu, we're dishing up the agent's secret weapon, owner financing.
Well, thank you, Jenny. And that was a mouthful. My goodness. Hey, y'all. We're gathered here once again for part group therapy, part inspiration, but entirely for real estate agents to help you sell more real estate and hopefully have way more fun doing it. So as y'all know, I speak realtor. And when we were Googling you, John Chin, you say that you speak investor. And I would say that's probably it's kind of a foreign language to most traditional real estate agents, right?
yeah, it is. Hence the investor agent brand.
Exactly. So I was hoping that today we might be able to like Duolingo for agents, right? And let's kind of dive in, because as an agent, typically we think an investor is only cash, right?
Yeah, you think of cash buyers, you think of these weird offers that listing agents are getting today.
Right?
Yeah.
Half off or whatever, like the minute it hits the market. So then let's start slow, because we are translating from realtor to investor. And so let's talk about owner financing and what that kind of means, so that we just can, I guess, translate how investing actually works for the traditional real estate agent.
So basically, we pulled some numbers on the way over here, and owner financing essentially sidelines the banks so that you can make better terms for buyers and net more money for sellers by making the listing more attractive, because you're checking another finance option that a lot of buyers would prefer over having to go through traditional underwriting with the bank, having to deal with an appraisal, having to submit all your documents, especially if you're a 1099 or a business owner with a P&L as opposed to a W-2 income earner.
Right.
And at the same time, if you're saving the buyers origination fees and thousands of dollars of interest a year because you can offer better terms than the prevailing rates, it makes it really attractive for buyers, and it's attractive for sellers because we can net them a lot more money.
But I thought that you had to own the property outright in order to do owner financing.
That's a very common misconception.
Okay.
And that's why I think only 1% of the MLS is offering owner financing, because all of those properties are paid off. But you can do what's called a loan wrap, where a seller offers a loan for a buyer, keeps their underlying loan in place, and then the payment coming in from the buyer covers the payment on the loan underneath. And sometimes there's even a cash flow spread. So
that's the key, is a lot of times the seller needs that equity out in order to buy something else. So that can be something. I mean, is that a needle in a haystack situation?
Oh, no. So if the seller needs all of their cash, these are great questions. If the seller needs all of their cash equity, then it wouldn't work for them.
Right.
But a lot of sellers don't need all their cash. They could, if they got 20% or 25% or 15% of the sale price, that's plenty for them to do what they need to do next.
Okay. And then the people that purchase with the owner financing or the loan wrap, kind of.
Yep, that's a loan wrap. Yep.
So there's many different options. They are paying the current mortgage then for them?
No, the owner. So there are subject to transactions where the buyer takes title to the property, the seller leaves their loan in place, and we cringe as licensed professionals.
I was going to say, that's like every time I hear that, I'm like, run away.
Yeah, especially if you're wearing, and I'm a broker in 2 states, and knock on wood, no black marks on my license, right? So we do a lot of transactions like this, and when you're wearing your broker's hat, you don't want the seller to give the buyer title and then trust that the buyer makes the payments for the seller's loan.
So much liability.
Yeah, that stays in the seller, especially if you have a fiduciary with the seller. So we have a much safer way to structure that, where a third-party servicing company takes over the payment for the loan that's in the seller's name, and then the buyer is technically paying the third-party servicing company.
So that third-party servicer is basically the one that's on the line, essentially.
Exactly. Well, the third-party
with the
servicer,
seller, yeah.
exactly. So the seller's not even interfacing with the buyer after closing. It's
Right.
a completely hands-off ACH deposits every single month.
Nice.
And then another company takes over the issues with the insurance policy.
I was going to ask that next. What about like the full TI part of it, the taxes and insurance part?
That's passed on to the payment for the buyer.
Okay.
So the buyer, like any owner financing, assumes the maintenance on the house, the tax, the insurance, and the HOA.
Okay.
So but what we don't do is we don't give the buyer title. Okay. So we lockbox the property in the seller's trust at closing, and we handle all of these things. So, and we also educate the buyers and the sellers and the buyer agent and the seller agent.
That was literally my next question. Like, so how, as a regular agent that doesn't speak this language very well, do you have kind of some like bullet point ways for us to be able to explain it to the consumer?
Absolutely.
Buyer or seller?
Yep. So we have cheat sheets and scripts inside of the investoragent.com community that we give away for free, so that the listing agent or the buyer's agent can have those simple conversations that gauge interest. And then if there's an interest on the client's part, then we do a Google Meet and we do a consult with the clients on the agent's behalf. Okay.
I'm thinking it from an owner perspective. If they're in that position where they only need like 20% or whatever out of it, they are wondering how long is this process?
Good question. Yeah.
How long can they have it? And when is it like officially paid off? So yeah, how long?
Yeah, so the seller dictates that, and we can do that with a balloon payment. So a lot of owners, because they've only seen, and even realtors, they've only seen 15-year and 30-year mortgages. They kind of have a misconception that it's got to be.
I have a 10-year mortgage, and there's many different. Balloons are sometimes like 5 or less, right?
That's exactly right. So we incorporate balloon payments on all of these.
Okay.
99% of them. Every once in a while, you have an owner that doesn't want to balloon it because they want the fixed income. Because where are you going to put your cash?
Right.
Like, especially older sellers, they're going to take their cash, they're going to sell their house. They don't need all their proceeds for the next purchase, or it was a rental property or a vacation home.
I was going to say, because your capital gains are going to be huge.
100%.
And so this is a really great way to kind of like ease that wound too, right?
Yeah. The 3 benefits, it kind of brings us to the 3 benefits we always educate sellers on is, number 1, you don't have to keep taking price reductions. You can make your property more attractive on terms and hold a higher price.
Okay, I think we need to say that one again. That is a definite translation that agent should understand. So you don't have to reduce the price, the sale price of your listing. You can list for that same price that you have and just offer owner financing.
Correct.
And then through your program.
Yeah, exactly. And then what we do is we put in all caps, owner financing available at blank rate.
What?
4.9%, 5.9% in the public remarks, and it syndicates to all the websites.
I'm sorry, 4.9%? You have that like right now today?
We have probably a couple dozen listings that we're working on right now where agents are offering anywhere from, because we always tell the sellers, if you want a higher price, make the terms more competitive than the banks.
Right. You have to, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense if you think about it like that. But again, most agents, they don't really like math very well. But I think that's what's so great about us translating for them is that we're going to do the math for you and then make it make sense.
That's 100% right. So if you're sweating the bullets on the math questions on your state exam, when you took your state exam,
we all are, because it's not that you don't think like that as an agent. You're salesy, and that's how most of our agents, right, are.
Yeah, you got
doesn't mean that they're bad at their job. They're just not thinking like in percentages and things like that.
No, it's the relational gift that agents bring, right? So you stay in the relationship. We do all the math and the financing, and all of our templates, by the way, the one we give away is plug and play. So you literally just put in what's the sale price, what % down does the seller want, and then what's the rate they want to offer, and then boom, it spits out what the structure of the owner finance would look like that you just then put on the MLS. And
it's that easy. And
it's super plug and play.
JoinInvestorAgent.com or just
It's just InvestorAgent.com. Yeah,
which is free to join.
Yep. And if you go to the seller finance section of InvestorAgent.com, there's a lot of free training and content and tools to download. The tool that I'm referring to is the seller finance calculator.
Okay. Is this for just here in Florida, or I know that you're a broker here in Florida and also North Dakota?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, right?
Is that where you're from?
No,
that is very weird. Like, let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, it's because we have we only work with investors.
Okay.
And here's the thing: the I word is a bad word for a lot of agents, and it's only because Somebody hit them up, a Zillow lead or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They had them chasing their tail, wanted to make 2013 offers in 2024.
Yeah.
They're trying to flip houses and they need to find that 30, 40, 50% margin,
Right.
and they don't exist. So,
and this is what's so great. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of agents were like, somebody called me and they want a house. And I'm like, listen, if they're an investor, there's a lot of work that you're going to do up front before you ever get paid. And that margin that they're looking for, you need to understand completely.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's a totally different, we could do a whole show on that.
That is another show.
But certainly don't let the I word become a four-letter word, right?
Yeah.
Be open to all things, because in this capacity, you're not thinking of it as somebody you're running around chasing your tail. You're thinking of it as, how can I sell my listing and offer really exceptional terms that nobody else can?
Yeah. And, coming back to the I word, probably 8 out of 10 investors are what I call the Uncle Joes. They're the ones who want to negotiate commissions, buy cheap, swing hammers, do the management themselves.
Yes.
We don't deal with those investors. The investors we deal with are high net worth clients in other states.
Okay.
They don't want to adopt a second job. They just want the tax write-offs of real estate. They want an inflation hedge. They want something that'll appreciate. They want tenants paying off those houses on their behalf. But they don't want to deal with management.
Okay. And so you have the calculator on your site that lets an agent do that for them?
Oh, the cash flows. And then if you couple the property with a property manager, now you have a turnkey wealth building experience. You're not selling houses anymore.
Okay.
That's the distinction. So people think that these investors, if they're going to attract investors, because you know what's appealing now when buyers and sellers aren't buying and selling?
What?
What's appealing is the database of high net worth clients that want tax write-offs that will fill in the gaps for your business of retail buyers and sellers.
Exactly.
And there's a ton of them out there. The problem is agents want to sell a commodity. They want to sell a house. You can't sell a house to those kind of clients and attract them and work with their referrals. Right. You got to sell a turnkey wealth building experience.
And I think that's the wealth building are two words that we don't necessarily think of in the forefront of our job as agents, but that's exactly what we're doing. That's my favorite part about it, is helping people understand that real estate is absolutely a wealth building tool in many, many, many facets. And the more that you understand that, or are able to work with people like John Chin, who can help you understand that, the more opportunities that you'll have to work with buyers. So North Dakota is where you have.
So what happened was we were working with a lot of North California. California is uninvestable. So from tenant protections, rent increase restrictions, evicting tenants, like it's just the price compared to the rent rates. It's a horrible place to invest. So a lot of our clients come out of California and they're trying to find affordable markets. Well, we sold, people talk sales volume. We'll do 16 million in 3 months, right? Because we'll have those investors buy turnkey rental properties in places where the prices are low and the rents are high.
Yeah.
And it's easy to evict tenants.
Okay.
If you find a place like that, we pair builder inventory with property management in place with those investors, and you do a ton of volume.
Okay, so now I'm understanding. When Jenny gave your intro, that's exactly what you meant. That is such a specific niche. Maybe kind of delve into that a little bit.
Yeah. So what happened in North Dakota was they were buying townhomes for $225,000 that were renting for $3,500 a month.
Wow.
Because Western North Dakota is our land-based oil gold mine.
Wow.
And there was a housing crisis. So
smart.
We find those little niches where there's a supply-demand imbalance on the rent side and the housing side. Okay. And then we bring our investors in and we make it a win for the local builders, because we say, look, we can help you sell 10% of your subdivision out in 30 days. You get all these contracts and deposits to help you go vertical. And then you just promise us that you won't sell any more to investors, because we don't want it to be a rental neighborhood.
Right.
And we get pre-construction pricing.
Wow.
And so between the two and the cash flows and the fact that you have professional property management, you have a turnkey wealth building experience with a really good story.
Wow.
And now I don't have to be golden handcuffed to my local market for buyers and sellers in my own town.
Wow, that's huge. So North Dakota is one place that you do that. This product that you offer, they can utilize the tools in really any state, correct?
Yeah, we've done it in Atlanta, 200 houses a year in Atlanta. We did Oklahoma City, we did Pittsburgh, we did Dallas, Western North Dakota. Okay. And the only reason I'm a broker up there is because the property management company we hired initially was horrible. And it affects your referrals, right? So even though you're the face on the sale, your property manager is who gets you your referrals.
Correct.
So if you have a horrible property management company, they don't communicate, they nickel and dime investors, we replaced them, and I had to bite the bullet and become the broker up there and become the property manager. So we manage about 500 doors up there.
I've been there before. Not that I've had a property management other than commercial, but yes, I'm like, fine, I'll just get licensed and I'll do it. That's why I'm basically a contractor. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not a contractor, but I kind of am. But either way, yeah, that's really super duper smart. Okay, so then let's talk to the standard agent. Let's translate a little bit more. What kind of properties are more attractive for this particular thing? Is it any property?
It's literally any house.
Okay.
So we have right now 62,000 active listings on the market as of this recording. And it's mind-blowing that only 614 of them have owner financing checked off. So you have FHA conventional, VA cash. And then now if you check the box owner financing, watch what happens to your showings and watch what happens to the offers that start coming in.
Right. Because
there are people specifically looking for it. And I'll tell you a story. It's not always people that are hard up. One of the ones we did in Ormond Beach, it was Airbnb. My buddy was trying to sell. He was overpriced by $50,000. He was selling for $800,000. It probably would have priced for $750,000. He couldn't get it sold. Showings fell off a cliff. It became stagnant. So I said, check the owner finance box. How much equity do you have? He says 400 because he owes about $350 on the house. He checked the owner financing box, got 25% down, which is $200,000 of his equity, which was plenty for him. He financed the balance at 6.5% for the seller or for the buyer. And the buyer wasn't, he could get a mortgage. He was rich. He just had all his stuff in trust and didn't want to deal with underwriting.
Again, why use your own money when you can leverage somebody else's? I'm a big proponent of that.
Especially if the rate's the same as what the bank's offering or better, and you don't have to pay origination fees, and you don't have to go through the underwriting process. So
we should dig into that a little bit too.
Yeah. So he financed that buyer, got his property sold in a week. Another one, I won't mention any names, but it's an owner of 4 brokerages in East Orlando. He had a listing that had 4 price reductions. It was on the market for 3 months. They wanted to do another price reduction, but if they did another price reduction, the loan wouldn't be paid off whole.
Oh, so he wanted to avoid the short sale option.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So some seller, there are so many listings right now that were purchased in the last couple of years with high leverage loans, USDA, VA, FHA, that if you take another price reduction, by the time they pay commissions and closing costs, they got to bring cash at closing to make the loan whole.
Right.
So rather than doing the price reduction, offer owner financing. That's what most of them are today. Is these sellers who don't have a lot of equity, they don't want to take another price reduction, or they can't. And so we offer owner financing and we get the property sold right away.
And it gives them that reprieve. So what is a great way, or a basic way, I would say, for an agent to assess whether a seller is open, to that kind of financing?
So we have a script, and it's a cheat sheet that talks about the 3 benefits of owner financing and the 2 objections sellers have, which you've already addressed.
Right, which is how long is it going to take? And then of course,
what happens if they default?
Correct.
So we'll talk about all that. So the 3 benefits is we can get you a higher price, which means more money in your pocket over time than you've taken price reductions and bleeding out your equity. Secondly, we can turn your low interest loan or your equity into cash flow.
Okay.
And by the way, here's the asterisk we put next to that benefit. It's passive cash flow. It's not like landlording. And if you ever have a seller who says, if this property doesn't sell, I'm just going to rent it out, 100% of the time, if they sell or finance, they're going to get a down payment up front as opposed to security deposit. They're going to get maintenance off their back and tax and insurance up the buyer.
Yeah.
They're going to net more money in cash flow every single month. They're going to save money on their, which is the 3rd benefit, right? On their capital gains, if they had a capital gain issue that they have to contend with on that property. Because you get to spread out that gain over the course of the loan. You're not hit with that taxable event the year of the sale.
And again, as you said, they're not renters because they bought that house. So you no longer care if the AC went out because that's not your problem. But when you are a landlord, you absolutely are hit with that big chunk of change there.
Yeah. So we've actually personally, RH and I have pivoted. Anything that we sell now, we do it with seller financing. We don't rent properties. We don't landlord. It's just we want lender income because it's truly passive.
Right.
You don't want landlord income. And then think about it from this perspective. We had an investor you have a lot of older landlords that want to sell off all their properties as they get older.
Right.
He wanted owner financing not only to save money on his capital gain hit, because these people bought a long time ago, right?
Yeah,
huge gain.
Yeah.
He wanted to do it because if he left his kids' houses, they don't want to be landlords. They're going to sell the houses probably for pennies on the dollar compared to what he could sell. And they're going to blow that money on whatever. He wanted to hand them the cash flow. So he said, if I sell my house with owner financing and do a 30-year loan, no balloon payment, I'm handing my kids now, when I die, a promissory note that produces cash flow every month, as opposed to a house that they're going to sell for nothing, or a bucket full of cash, which was his equity at the sale. So there's a ton of reasons.
So many smart things, so many different ways that you can really utilize the tools that you guys offer.
100%.
Which we don't ever think about. And so basically this would be for you if you sell real estate. So there's not really a house type or a client type. It's just, let's log on to investoragent.com and look at the tools and kind of see what the calculations are. And if they have a hard time, putting all of that into words, you've got the cheat sheet, right?
We have the cheat sheet, and we have our calendar inside the community. You can access our calendar and literally have me do this conversation with your client. That's
what I was going to ask. I'm like, can you say all of that? Because a lot of times they would be like, well, you can capital gain something or other. Like, that's what I'm thinking, I'm envisioning, right? Right, Jenny? Can't you see, like, they're great, but especially when the seller is hitting them with like a million questions and they're already really nervous as it is, oftentimes, this is really a really cool thing. So they can present this as another part of their listing presentation when the time comes, or while they're under their listing contract. This can be like, hey, I know you've been kind of nervous about blah, blah, blah. Why don't you talk to John or RH, and they can tell you about their product, and we'll see if it works for you. Yeah. Okay. And we get paid, by the way, the reason that we do this, selfishly, because it's not I was going to say, right? That was one of my questions I had for you, but thank you for bringing it up. The buyer pays us 1% of the sale price. Okay. So it costs nothing for the listing agent, costs nothing for the seller. The buyer saves a ton of money on origination fees. So it's an alternative. How does a buyer get approved for this type of thing? Since it's within if it's a healthy down payment, like 15, 20% or more, the sellers don't care, because their security is the skin in the game that the buyer put up, just like any loan. Right. If they don't have a lot of equity and they're not going to get a big down payment, then like 5-10% down, then we want to make sure we do credit checks. We look at bank statements. We want to make sure that they have enough. They make 3 times what the monthly rent, the monthly payment's going to be. Right. So yeah, we're looking for, we will check credentials if they're doing a small down payment and they don't have a lot of skin in the game. But remember that when we do defaults, what we don't do in a typical foreclosure process, which is painful, it takes a long time and it's expensive for sellers. We avoid that whole process because we use the trust structure. The buyer doesn't get a deed. So if the buyer defaults, the trust says in 60 days, you will lose your control of the property and we can evict you. We don't have to foreclose on you. So it's not a typical promissory note that's secured by a mortgage, which is just a lien that forces them to foreclose. It's actually way better default protections. So in that default for the new buyer, if that does happen, does the seller then get their house back, or how does that work? They get to keep their down payment, get their house back, or the payment assurance plan, which we can talk about later, will take over the property so the seller doesn't have to deal with it. Okay, and so then would it then relist? Yeah, then you can relist it again if the seller got it back and they keep the full down payment. And is that something that you guys do to relist? Or no, we would hand it back to the original agent. So you really are partners. Yeah, we don't sell. You do a different part of the process. And I think that's the hardest thing for agents to remember, is that there's so many moving parts in any real estate transaction, but especially if you're utilizing very creative financing or owner financing. That why don't you just let the people do what they do and you do what you do, and right butts, right seats, right? We're all about that. Yeah, all about the right butts and the right seat. So we always come to the icing on the cake. So that little roundup. What resources or educational materials would you recommend? Obviously, Investor Agent. Yeah, everything's at investoragent.com. And as it relates to seller financing, just go to the main menu. You'll see seller finance section. Okay. And that's where all of the video posts, you'll see posting case studies, examples, scripts, cheat sheets, calculators. It's all right there for free. And this is all for free. Free, yeah. So I do know that when you go to investoragent.com, you have to sign up. You don't immediately get access. You have to grant them access. Correct. Because we only let licensed agents in there. So you have to put your license number, your brokerage, and your name. And then that has to get checked out. Then I approve it. Usually it takes me a day to approve. So be patient. I know that we're not very patient, we real estate agents, are we? But be patient, because good things will come to those who wait.
What's really cool is we have an awesome virtual WeeklyToGoBox that John is offering for everyone.
Yeah, if you go to, it's a seller finance / loan wrap calculator. So if you don't like math, it's a plug and play document.
Nobody likes math.
No, most
Actually,
people
I
don't.
kind of like math.
So you have this doc, you need Excel. You can download it. It's free, obviously. Once you download it, you literally just put in the sale price, the down payment percentage, everything, and it does all the math for you. And now you have a framework or what to present to a seller. Makes you look like a superstar.
That is an awesome weekly to go box. Well, for the last bite, is there anything you'd like to tell our audience, which is a real estate agent who is selling houses?
Yeah, I would say every seller needs to know what this option looks like, because every seller that we've talked to has taken this option in the MLS, and agents are not talking about it.
Well, let's talk about it. All right, y'all. Remember, real estate is crazy, and you don't have to be.